welcome to Whispers of Ink. I'm Machado de Assis, and now I will read one of my stories.
Let's start with the book Admiral's Night, which is part of my novels collection. Chapter 1. Deolindo Ventagranditis was a nickname he got on the ship left, the Navy Arsenal, and walked down Rua de Bragança. It was 3 in the afternoon. He was one of the best sailors around, and more than that, he looked truly happy. His ship had just returned from a long training trip, and as soon as he got permission, he came ashore. His shipmates teased him with big smiles. "Hey Venta Grande, what an admiral's night you're about to have. Dinner, guitar music, and Genoveva's arms. Genoveva's little house. Genoveva herself." Deolindo smiled. That's exactly what it was, an admiral's night, like they said. One of those big, unforgettable nights was waiting for him on land. He had fallen for her 3 months before his ship left. Her name was Genoveva. She was a young woman of 20, smart, with dark and bold eyes. They met at a friend's house and quickly fell head over heels. So much so that they almost made a wild decision. He would quit his job and she would go with him to the farthest town in the countryside. But Inacia, the old lady who lived with Genoveva, talked them out of it. Deolindo had no choice but to go on the trip. It would be 8 or 10 months away. As a promise to each other, they decided to make a vow of loyalty. "I swear by God in heaven," he said. "And you?" "I swear too." "Say it properly." "I swear by God in heaven, may I lose the light at the hour of my death." The promise was made. There was no doubt they both meant it. She cried uncontrollably, and he bit his lip to hide his own tears. Eventually, they parted. Genoveva went to watch the ship leave, and walked home with a tightness in her chest so strong, it felt like something terrible might happen. But nothing happened, thank God. Days passed, then weeks, then months and long months. Finally the ship came back, and Deolindo was on it. Now here he was, walking down Rua de Bragança, passing through Praina and Sude, all the way to the start of Gamboa, where Genoveva lived. Deolindo walked slowly through the narrow streets, his heart heavy but hopeful. The house was small and dark, its doorway cracked from years in the sun, near the English cemetery. Genoveva must be there, leaning out the window, waiting for him. He had practiced what he would say to her. At first he thought of saying, "I swore and I kept my word," but he wanted something better. Something more true. At the same time, he remembered all the women he had seen on his travels, Italians, Marseille girls, Turkish women. Many were beautiful, or at least seemed so to him. He knew not all were meant for someone like him, but some could have been. Still, he never gave them a second thought. His thoughts always went back to Genoveva. Even her little house, so small and worn, with broken furniture and only a few old things inside, stayed in his mind. It stood out against the palaces he had seen in other lands. He had saved every coin to buy a pair of earrings in Trieste, and now they sat in his pocket, along with a few other small gifts. And what had she kept for him? Maybe a handkerchief with his name stitched on it, and an anchor at the corner. She used to sew very well. As he reached Gamboa, he passed the cemetery and finally sees her house. But it is closed. He knocks. A familiar voice calls from inside it's old Inasha, who opens the door with loud cries of joy. Deolindo, eager and impatient, asks right away, "Where is Genoveva?" Inasha frowns and says, "Don't speak to me about that crazy girl. I'm glad I gave her my advice. Just imagine if she had run off. Now there goes a fine love." "But what happened? What's wrong?" Deolindo asks. "Calm down," the old woman says. "It's nothing serious. Just one of those things that happen in life. Don't get upset." "She's lost her head," Inasha continues. "Lost her head over what?" Deolindo asks. "Over a traveling salesman," she replies. "Jose Diogo. You know him? He sells cloth. They're together now. You wouldn't believe how much they love each other. She's completely gone. That's why we fought," Inasha adds. "Jose Diogo wouldn't leave our doorstep. Always talking, always hanging around. One day I told him I wouldn't let my house be ruined by such nonsense." "Oh, Lord above," she exclaims. That was a day of reckoning. Genoveva stared at me with eyes as wide as saucers and said she never slandered anyone and didn't need charity. Charity? What I meant was, I didn't want her gossiping by the door since early evening. 2 days later, she had changed completely and was angry with me. "Where does she live?" "In Praia Formosa. Before you reach the quarry. A new sign on the house." Deolindo didn't want to hear another word. Old Inasha, somewhat regretful, still gave him warnings to be careful, but he ignored them and kept walking. I won't describe what he thought along the way. He wasn't thinking at all. Ideas swirled in his head like during a storm, caught in a mess of winds and whistles. Among those thoughts flashed the image of a bloody revenge-seeking sailor's knife. He had passed through Gamboa, gone around Saco do Alferes, and entered Praia Formosa. He didn't know the exact house number, but it was near the quarry, freshly painted, and with help from neighbors he could find it. He hadn't counted on chance finding Genoveva first and making her sit by the window, sewing, just as Deolindo walked past. He recognized her and stopped. She, seeing a man's figure, lifted her eyes and saw the sailor. "What is this?" she exclaimed, surprised. "When did you arrive? Come in, Mr. Deolindo." And standing up, she opened the gate and invited him in. Any other man would feel hopeful, because her manner was so open and warm. Maybe the old woman had made a mistake or lied. Maybe the merchant's song was over. All these thoughts rushed through his mind, not clearly, not calmly, but fast and chaotic. Genoveva left the gate open. She asked him to sit, asked about his trip, and said he looked healthier. There was no emotion, no closeness. Deolindo lost his final hope. Without a knife, his hands would be enough to strangle Genoveva, who was barely more than a girl. For the first few minutes, that was all he could think about. "I know everything," he said. "Who told you that?" Genoveva asked. Deolindo shrugged. "Whoever it was," she went on. "Did they say I really liked a young man?" "They did. And they told the truth." Deolindo started to speak again, but she stopped him with just a look. Then she said that if she had opened the door to him, it was because she thought he was a reasonable man. She told him everything, how much she had missed him, the trader's proposals, her refusals, until one day, without knowing how, she realized she had fallen for the trader. "You can believe I thought about you a lot, many times," she added. "Ask Miss Inashe if I didn't cry a great deal. But the heart changes." It changed. "I'm telling you all this as if I were in front of a priest," she finished with a smile. Not a mocking smile, but one that mixed innocence and boldness, arrogance and simplicity, in a way I can't quite explain. Maybe arrogance and boldness aren't even the right words. Genoveva wasn't defending herself from any mistake or lie. She wasn't trying to defend anything at all. She simply lacked a moral standard by which to judge her actions. What she basically said was that it would have been better not to change, that she got along well with Diolindo's affection, and proof of that was her wish to run away with him. But since the trader had won over the sailor, then the trader must have been the better man, and she had to admit that. "What do you think?" The poor sailor reminded her of the farewell promise, seeing it as an eternal obligation he had accepted when he chose not to escape with her and instead went to sea. "I swear by God who is in heaven, may light fail me at the hour of my death." He only boarded the ship because she had sworn that oath to him. Those very words had kept him going through his travels, and waiting, and returning. They had given him strength to keep living. "I swear by God who is in heaven, may light fail me at the hour of my death." Well, yes, Diolindo, that was true. When I swore it, it was true. So true that I really wanted to run away with you into the backlands. Only God knows how true it was. But other things came along. This young man came, and I began to like him. But we swear promises exactly so that won't happen, that we won't come to like anyone else. Genoveva folded her arms and gave Diolindo a sharp look. "Come on, Diolindo." "So, you're saying you only thought of me? Spare me the act." She paused and then asked, "When will Jose Diogo be back?" "He won't be back today," Diolindo replied. "No." "No. He's out in Garatiba with the chest. He should return either Friday or Saturday." "Why do you want to know?" Diolindo asked. "What did he ever do to you?" It was a question that could have come from any jealous woman, but few could have said it with such pure, almost innocent honesty, not because she meant to, but simply because that was who she was. You could feel the rawness of life in her words. What harm had he done her? What harm had that rock done, falling down from above? A physics teacher could explain how rocks fall, but could he explain why people do? Diolindo threw his hands up in frustration and said, "I wanted to kill him." Genoveva stared at him with clear disdain. She gave a small, quiet smile, then made a soft noise of disapproval. When he started talking about betrayal and broken promises, she couldn't hide her surprise. Broken promises. Betrayal. I told you before, and I'll say it again, that when I made those promises, I meant them. Our Lady, who was right there on the dresser, knows whether I was telling the truth or not. She stepped closer, her voice rising slightly. "Is this how you repay everything I went through for you? And you, who always talk so much about loyalty, did you even think of me while you were away?" He didn't answer with words. Instead, he reached into his pocket and pulled out the small bundle he had brought for her. She took it and opened it slowly, lifting each item with little interest. Trinkets, all of them. Then finally her fingers touched the earrings. They weren't expensive, couldn't have been. Really, and they were a bit gaudy. But they sparkled in a way that caught the light and held it. Genoveva lifted them, her eyes lighting up. She turned them in her hands, looking at them from every angle, holding them close to her face and then far away. Without a word, she slid them into her ears. Then she walked over to the small round mirror hanging on the wall between the window and the door. She stepped back, leaned in, and turned her head from right to left, and then left to right. "Yes, sir," she said, smiling at her reflection. "These are really something." She gave a deep, exaggerated bow, like a noblewoman thanking a king. "Thank you very much." He looked at her and didn't answer, not because he wanted to ignore her, but because she kept asking more questions before he could even open his mouth. She was confused, trying to understand why he had brought her a gift after forgetting her for so long. That confusion lasted maybe 5 minutes, maybe even less. Soon enough, she took off her earrings, looked at them carefully, and placed them inside a small box on the round table in the middle of the room. He, watching her, began to think. If he had lost her while he was away, then maybe the other man also absent could lose her too. And perhaps she had never made any real promise to him. "Time flies when you're having fun," Genoveva said, almost to herself. And indeed, night was falling fast. They could no longer see the Lazaro hospital across the water, and only barely made out the shape of Milan's island. Even the boats and canoes pulled up on the shore in front of the house blended into the mud and shadows of the beach. Genoveva lit a candle. Then she went to sit by the door, on the doorstep, and asked Dolindo to tell her something about the places he had been. At first he refused. He said he should go, stood up, and walked a few steps around the room. But Hope the cruel, sweet demon was gnawing at his heart, drooling over every possibility. So he sat back down and told 2 or 3 sea stories from his travels. Genoveva listened with real interest. Then a neighbor woman arrived and interrupted them. Genoveva invited her to sit as well, saying, "Come hear the wonderful stories Mr. Dolindo is telling." There was no formal introduction. The rich lady who stays up late, just to finish a chapter of her book, doesn't live through the lives of its characters more deeply than Genoveva now lived through Dolindo's tales. She followed each scene with full attention, completely caught up, as though between them there was nothing else now but these stories being told. What did the rich lady care who wrote the book? Or did Genoveva care who told the stories? Still, hope was beginning to leave him. Slowly, he rose again, this time for good, ready to walk out the door. Dolindo lingered in the doorway, but Genoveva wouldn't let him leave just yet. "Wait," she said, her eyes lighting up. "You must show Clara the earrings first." She hurried off to fetch them, handling them like treasures as she returned. "Look at these," she exclaimed, handing them over with a proud smile. Clara took them gently, holding them up to the light. "Oh, they're lovely," she gasped. "Did you buy them in France?" Genoveva beamed and slipped them on. "Well, don't they look amazing?" She turned from side to side, admiring her reflection. For a moment, Dolindo smiled too. He felt a quiet pride, the kind that comes from giving something truly special. But it didn't last long. He moved toward the door, ready to go. Genoveva followed closely behind, calling out softly, "Thank you again, Dolindo." And then, under her breath, he whispered something only she could hear, something sweet and meaningless, like promises made in dreams. Back in the room, Clara caught just a few words. "Stop it, Deolindo," and his calm reply, "You'll see." That was all. The rest was just a hushed murmur between them. As Deolindo stepped outside, his shoulders sagged. He walked slowly down the beach, no longer the fiery young man who had arrived earlier that day. Now he looked tired, older, like someone returning home after a long voyage on foot, still stuck halfway out at sea. Inside, Genoveva came back full of energy. "Can you believe him?" She laughed. "He's so dramatic sometimes. Did you know he told me he might kill himself?" "Kill himself?" Clara asked, shocked. "Oh, don't worry," Genoveva waved a hand. "He says things like that all the time. It's just how he is. He doesn't mean it. It's jealousy, that's all. Besides, look at these earrings. Aren't they the best thing ever?" "I've never seen anything like them," Clara admitted. "Me neither," Genoveva said, inspecting them once more before tucking them away. Then she grabbed a needle and thread. "Come on, let's sew for a bit. I want to finish my blue dress tonight." And as it turned out, Deolindo didn't kill himself after all. The next morning, a few of his friends patted him on the back, teasing him about his night as an admiral, a joke about the wild evening he had supposedly spent. They asked him about Genoveva, whether she had looked more beautiful than ever, if she had cried a lot while he was away, things like that. He answered each question with a quiet, satisfied smile, the kind people wear when they've experienced something unforgettable. But the truth is, he felt ashamed of what really happened and chose to lie instead.
Thank you for listening so far. If you enjoyed this video, don't forget to like our channel and click the bell to be notified whenever a new book is read. Have you heard of Machado de Assis? Machado de Assis, born in Rio de Janeiro in 1839, is considered one of the greatest writers in Brazilian literature and a master of psychological realism. He was a novelist, poet, playwright, and short story writer whose works explore the complexities of human behavior with irony, subtlety, and deep introspection. Among his most famous novels are Dom Casmurro, which questions truth and memory, and the posthumous memoirs of Brás Cubas, a satirical narrative told by a deceased man. Machado's literature often reflects the contradictions of Brazilian society, addressing issues like race, class, power, and identity in a sophisticated yet accessible style. Despite being born into poverty and facing racial prejudice, Machado de Assis rose to become the president of the Brazilian Academy of Letters and a symbol of literary excellence. His sharp wit and profound observations about society and the human soul make his works timeless and universally relevant. Today, he is recognized not only as a Brazilian icon, but also as a world-class author whose legacy continues to influence generations of writers and thinkers. Machado de Assis shows us that literature can be both elegant and critical, intimate and universal, humorous and profound. His stories remain as powerful and thought-provoking today as they were more than a century ago. Machado is a treasure of world literature, and through his voice, we discover the infinite layers of the human experience.